You're listening to A.C.E Podcast Nation, the hottest new podcast network and YouTube channel in the UK, featuring original series, top guests, expert analysts, and more. Check out facebook.com/AceCast Nation for news on latest guests and shows. Watch every show in full at youtube.com/ACE Podcast Nation.
I'm Ben Ellis, Cage Warriors Featherweight. Check out and subscribe to A.C.E Podcast Nation on YouTube for one of the best fight podcasts around, and the Danny Batten Fight Show every Wednesday for all MMA news.
Defending champion, welcome, Danny Batten!
Hey guys, I'm Sai and welcome to A.C.E Podcast Nation, the home of the Danny Batten Fight Show. This is episode number 63. Tonight we'll be talking to our special guest, plus having a look at the latest news and rumours in the fight world, plus of course breaking down last night's incredible UFC 258 card, and lastly we'll finish off with some predictions for next week's fights. But as usual, you can get this show and all the other series and shows we do youtube.com/Ace Podcast Nation if you'd like to watch it, and if you prefer to download the audio, you can get it at all podcast platforms. Just search Ace Podcast Nation and you'll find all the different series under that banner. But without further ado, let's introduce first of all my co-host, as usual, former Cage Warriors champion, UK MMA legend, Mr. Danny Batten. How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm really good. Hello, Sai. Hello, Cory. Yeah, good. Wow, I thought it was a hell of a treat of UFC last night. So I'm buzzing to get talking about it a little later.
Yeah, mate, it was a really good show, actually. I enjoyed it. So it wasn't many finishes. Like, we've been treated recently to a lot of finishes, and like the main card, I felt like there was a lot of the fights went the distance, which is not always a bad thing, and particularly when they're entertaining fights. But we'll get to that a bit later. But before we do, I'm delighted to welcome our special guest this week is none other than, I believe, the first Welsh female to sign with the UFC, hot off her impressive debut with the promotion. It's UFC Strawweight, Cory Poppins Mckenna. Welcome, Cory. Great to have you. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's all good. We're looking forward to it. So I think first and foremost, we'll ask you is, how does it feel to be the first Welsh female to sign with the UFC?
Yeah, it's great. Obviously, there's a lot of Welsh guys coming through at the moment. I think there was 4 in the UFC. I know Brett John's gone on to Bellator and everything now, but yeah, there's a lot of Welsh talent coming through. So it's really cool for me to be able to say that I'm, not only am I obviously in with them guys, but also first female to do so. Hopefully there'll be many more coming, afterwards.
Yeah, indeed. As I love it when we have the Welsh fighters on the show. It makes me feel at home nicely. But we had Arnold Allen on last week, who is a friend of yours, teammate of yours, and he insinuated to us that you are not Welsh. He said, she's English. So could you tell us a bit about that?
So I have this debate a lot, and it's actually something that my father gets rather heated over this. So my dad was in the military, which meant we moved around a lot. So obviously I spent a large portion of my teen years sort of where I met Arnold in obviously Colchester. But my dad's Welsh, my family's Welsh. I spent a lot of my childhood in Wales, moved back to Wales. So he likes to argue it. He just likes to kind of just try and stir the pot a little bit. But
yeah.
No, I'm representing Wales.
Excellent. See, Dan, see that? Welsh and proud. We've been blessed, actually. We've been very lucky. We've had some of the best Welsh fighters around, and it's good to continue that trend. But I wanted to ask you a bit about coming up. Like, we've talked a bit, me and Danny, and with the various guests, and particularly with Richard Shaw, we talked about it as well, is like when I was growing up in Cardiff, there was there was no MMA gyms or anything like that. Yes, it was about 25 years ago, but that's not the point. It's there was maybe like the odd boxing gym, but there was no MMA stuff. Obviously, the UFC was just sort of starting to become quite prevalent in the tournaments and stuff they were doing when I was younger. But like now, there's Welsh, there's the MMA gyms all over Wales. Obviously, you've got Shaw MMA in Abertillery. You've got Brett Johns' one up in Swansea. There's others scattered around. Of course, you've got the Matt Academy as well. Like, how did you come about becoming an MMA fighter?
So I actually started MMA at BKK, obviously in Colchester. Like I say, that's where I kind of met Arnold and everything. Again, my dad was away in the military a lot. I needed like kind of a bit of a hobby, a bit of pastime. So I ended up tagging along to like a karate session with my mother. I actually hated it at first, and then came back like a year later and ended up enjoying it. But yeah, I ended up kind of, after a year of competing in karate, I kind of just naturally tried my hand at jiu-jitsu, boxing, Muay Thai, and then at that point I was like, well, I'm doing everything, I might as well give MMA a go. So my dad found BKK fighters, and I moved down there when I was 13, and kind of that kick-started everything really.
So was 13 like around the age where you were like, right, I'm going to do this is going to be what my career is, and I'm going to sort of pursue it that way? Or was it a bit earlier than that, do you reckon?
I was very passionate about it from the start, but I think with MMA especially, it's one of those things where I don't think you 100% want to do it and commit your life to it until you've actually done it. So for me, probably around 14, 15, when I started actually competing in, I had like multiple Muay Thai fights. I was competing jiu-jitsu from the age of like 10. So like until you've actually stepped in the ring or the cage and kind of got a taste of the competition, I don't think it's something anyone really knows they specifically want to do. So yeah, probably around 14, 15, I was like, oh, this is 100% what I'm doing. I made the decision to leave school and train full time after my GCSEs, and never looked back really.
Were you always competitive, like from a young age?
I'm ridiculously competitive. Yeah, like to the point where like me and my roommate will get competitive carrying the groceries from the car. Like it's everything. So yeah, it definitely fits in well for me.
Excellent. It's a weird one because, like, people from maybe the outside who are not fans of MMA and stuff, like even like my father-in-law, for instance, like he'll watch like the big card, he'll watch Conor McGregor, or he'll watch some of the Welsh fighters, but he's probably more of a boxing sort of fan generally. And a couple of years ago, when Ronda Rousey was like at her peak, I had said to him one day, going to watch Ronda Rousey's fight tonight, whatever, and he's like, oh, Ronda, is that a woman, is it? And I was like, yeah, it's, she's a great fighter, it's always really entertaining stuff. And he was like, oh no, I don't want to watch the women fight. And like, I feel like since then, over the last probably maybe 5 or 6 years, like women's MMA has completely taken off. And like me and Danny talk a lot, like in my opinion, the best fights of the last 12 months, for instance, I'd say 3 out of the top 5 are female fights. But you still feel like maybe people from the outside who don't follow the sport still kind of frown upon female fighting, whether it be MMA or boxing?
I've never really ran into it myself. I mean, I get a lot of questions as to why I don't obviously fight full time and everything, but I feel like the guys do as well. People that don't really understand the sport, obviously it's a little bit strange when you tell them that you want to get beat up for a living. But no, it's to me, I think it's like you say, it's developed a lot, and I don't really get any sort of different treatment due to my gender. Obviously, it's less common for women to be fighting, so I do feel like perhaps there's differences in that regard, but not because of my gender, if that makes sense. Like there's less women fights, there's less common and everything, but it's not because we're women. It's a smaller talent pool. Then obviously there's a lot of guys out there, so it's a lot more common, there's a lot more eyes on it almost. But as you say, some of the best fights recently have been women.
Yeah, and you said you competed for such a young age in jiu-jitsu tournaments, and you've competed in Thai boxing. And being that you were so young, I take it that you had the full blessing of the people that care about you most, parents and so on and so forth. Have they been supportive even as you decided to become a full-on pro MMA fighter? Because that's a big thing in anyone's life. And the fact, I've got a daughter, and I don't know, the thought of her getting in there, I don't know how I'd handle that. How's the parent side of things been with that?
Yeah, like you say, I'm very fortunate. I definitely don't think I'd be where I am without them. Like I say, it was actually my dad's idea when I was looking at leaving school. He was like, well, if you really want to do it, like kind of, give it 100% and go for it. So, I made the agreement with them as long as I kept my good grades and, I got like straight A's in my exam. Like they were like, yeah, cool, you can do what you want. Like, you've worked hard to kind of make your own decisions, and they did nothing but support me. My dad was driving me around for a couple of years after I left school because I couldn't drive. He would literally sit in the car whilst I did like 3 hours at the gym, then he'd drive me to the next gym, and so yeah, they were ridiculously supportive, and they still are now. Anything I need, they're there to help me. So I'm very fortunate in that regard.
Yeah, and who gave you this nickname? Because you got on your profile here, Hobbit and Poppins. What was that all about? Did it something you gave yourself, or did it something that transpired just amongst the training community that you have? How did this name come about?
So Hobbit was the first fight name. That actually stemmed from back when I was about 14. One of my Muay Thai fights. They were always making jokes about, obviously I'm vertically challenged. So
I get those jokes all the time still.
Yeah. So one of the fights, my Thai coach looked at me and went, "You're like an angry little hobbit." And then it kind of just stuck. People would introduce me at the gym. They'd be like, "Oh, this is the Hobbit." So I kind of just took it on as my fight name when I left BKK as a bit of like homage to them, because it was what they all called me. They still call me it. But Uriah for the last 3 years has been really trying to get me to take on the Poppins name. He was trying so hard, bless him, to make it catch on. He was like tagging it on everything, posting it all the time, doing Instagram polls, and he was like, and I was still like, no, Hobbit, and everyone here hated that. But he says Poppins because I'm proper. I pop people in the face. I'm popping joints, and I also am the gym babysitter. So yeah. So after he got me the contenders fight, I said I'd take on the Poppins name as a bit of a thank you.
Excellent.
So, that is incredible. I know exactly what it's like to be made fun of for your height. My kids make fun of me now because they're all but one of them are taller than me. Then Hobbit feet is what I get called. But there you go. I'm sure they mean it lovingly. So obviously you did the UFC Contender Series, but what was it like, or talk us through when you've got the call to kind of say that the UFC were going to sign you sort of full time, and how that felt? Because obviously, that's the beginning of a culmination of all your hard work. Obviously, every fighter wants to be a champion, which is the full sort of culmination of that hard work. But getting to the biggest promotion in the world is a big step, isn't it?
Yeah, obviously I found out that night after I won the contenders fight that obviously Dana did his little post fight event speech, and he signed everyone on that night actually. But it was great. There was a little bit of nerves, obviously. He tried to build some suspense, and he was umming and ahhing as to whether to do it. But like you say, it's definitely a very big goal of mine ticked off. It's something that I've been aspiring to do my entire life. I've been working for over half my life towards this. So it was almost like a sense of relief. I was just kind of like, oh great, I'm here now. But like you say, this is only step one. So I didn't really dwell on it too much. I knew that all that meant was that I'm now in the even deeper waters, and I've got to keep putting in even more work just to try and climb those rankings and prove to everybody that I'm not only a UFC fighter but also the best.
Were your parents there at the final of the Contenders?
No. So my dad's been at every single fight since I was competing in jiu-jitsu. So these were the only two fights he couldn't come to because obviously they're in Vegas, COVID, lockdown, and everything like that. So so the last two fights have been the only ones that I've not had my family at, which is a bit of a shame. But literally, the second they stopped took the cameras out of my face, I was straight on the phone to my family backstage. They were actually trying to they rush us all into the room backstage after we fight so we can wait for the who signed announcement and stuff. But they let me sneak off into another room and phone my parents. So that was nice of them.
That's cool. What obviously you made your sort of full debut in the UFC against Kay Hansen with, I thought, a pretty decisive victory. I thought it was pretty impressive. Was it nice to kind of get that full debut out the way? Were you able to sort of enjoy it in the run-up to it and afterwards? Or was it kind of just complete fight mode and didn't really take it in?
To me, it was very much like a regular fight. Just because, like you say, I think too many people put too much pressure on the whole like UFC thing. At the end of the day, like you're going in there and you're fighting someone, regardless of what organization it is. So I just approach every fight like it's the biggest fight of my life. The only difference really was after Contenders, I obviously had the opportunity to move out here full time, so I was able to do the full 12-week camp at Team Alpha Male. It was a bit more relaxed because I was I was situated there now as well, so I kind of I didn't have all the other stuff going on. And yeah, I got a really good full camp in with the best coaches available to me. The fight, like I say, I watched it back, and my coaches agree that I definitely think I won it. It was a lot closer than I wanted to, and obviously, with the injury and everything, I haven't been able to jump straight in there yet. But yeah, just hopefully next time I go out there and put more of a stamp on it and get like a finish or something a bit more decisive.
What was the full extent of the injury after?
I tore a bunch of ligaments on the outside of my ankle, and I fractured my tibia. So I had reconstructive surgery on it, and then I'm kind of still recovering from that.
That's a nasty one, that is. Like, even just the ligament on its own is quite nasty, but obviously to break your tibia as well is brutal. So are you looking at, will you be able to fight by the time this year's out, or is it going to be probably early next year?
I was aiming for maybe one at the end of summer and then one towards the end of the year. But I think I want to make sure I'm being sensible. I'm still having trouble with the ankle. Still easing back into it. I'm just about hitting the bags, but I'm having to keep like flat-footed. I can't pivot or anything. So I don't want to throw myself straight into a fight camp and still have that in the back of my head, or not be able to go 100%. So I'm going to have at least one by the time the year's out, but I'm not really going to put too much of a time restrictions on it, because I don't want to. I've done that already, this injury. I've been like, oh, the doctor said I can do this in a month, and then I get to it and I'm like, I can't do it physically, and I'm getting all frustrated. So yeah, I'm just going to take it as it comes and hopefully get one or two in by the end of the year, but just try and be smart, because at the end of the day, I've got like 10, 15 years left of fighting in me. I don't want to have an injury that's going to plague me for the rest of my career.
Yeah, the last thing you want to do is rush back and then do like just like something innocuous, just like a leg kick or something like that, and your ankle goes, or something with your tibia, just because you've not rushed back, but maybe haven't made sure that it's completely right. It's the last thing you want in terms of like long-term effects. I know Danny's going to ask this question, so I'm going to nip in before he does. But what was like some of the biggest differences you noticed from obviously training with Team Alpha Male compared to training over in the UK?
So I've been coming out here for 3 years now. I've been doing pretty much 3 months on, 3 months off. So I already had quite a solid base out here, and I've obviously had a lot of experience training out here with the team. The main difference for me, and the reason that I wanted to move out here, is predominantly the fact that we have that professional schedule. We have a professional team. Back home, a lot of people, there's not as many professional fighters in regards to training all day and like having that schedule that can cater to it. Like, coaches have day jobs, like the fighters have day jobs. So I'm not having to drive like 3-4 hours a day just to go down around different gyms and try to find training so that I can get like 2 or 3 sessions a day in. Here it's all under one roof. It's all where I need it, and like I'm guaranteed training partners on the mats every single day, as well as obviously coaching staff.
Yeah, Danny, that's something we've talked about numerous times, isn't it? Like, I think sometimes people, maybe from the outside, they don't realise how many professional MMA fighters in the UK have got day jobs, or the coaches have got day jobs or other jobs, which means that the amount of dedication and effort it takes to train professionally and hold down a day job is just incredible. And I think a lot of these fighters don't get enough credit for being able to do that, because I look at it and I think, Jesus, how could you go from like a full-time job and train, professionally to a high level to go and be a Cage Warriors champion, or, whatever it may be. and obviously as a coach yourself, mate, you will see. We've talked about Tom Mearns and other fighters who do similar sorts of things. It's quite brutal for some of those fighters, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the issue over here in the UK is that either the gym itself can't financially support the fighters in a way where they can reduce down to, say, part-time or not having a job at all, and also they're not backed by sponsorship enough. Whereas when you're stateside or Canada, places like that, they're so much easier to get support through sponsorship that can fund your lifestyle as a pro fighter when you're trying to make it before you can uphold yourself with your own financial means. And I think that's going to lead a lot of people into temptation. I think particularly for the girls, the girls are really taking off, and how much I support that. I love watching the female bouts, and I think they should feature more on the main card and being the main fights and co-fights of UFC more often. But that said, over here in the UK, it must be quite hard to get the sparring and training partners in as a female, because each gym maybe have 2 or 3, possibly 4 female fighters, but then over spread of different weights as well. So of course you have to travel around to get a mix of training in. It can't be easy. Just as another question to you, Cory, when you say you've got everything under one roof, I take it there's plenty of female fighters for you to train with on a regular basis, or do you find you're mixing with the guys?
So I mix in with the guys a lot, obviously, because they got a lot of smaller guys and everything. And I like working with the guys. I feel like they push me in ways that obviously like the women aren't going to. But in the same regards as I need female partners because they move in ways that guys don't. There's a lot of women on the mat. There's not really a lot of women at the moment. But my last camp I had Sarah McMahon around. I was training with Yan. She's ranked number 3 in the strawweight division, just fought Claudia Gadea literally a week before me. So we did our camp together. I've also been traveling down to CSA on Saturdays to get some sparring in with the girls there. They're really high level kickboxers. So there's plenty of women around. It's not necessarily like a large female team per se, but there's definitely a lot of female bodies for me to test myself against, as well as obviously smaller men. And even the slightly larger men, like I have some 35ers that do my rounds and stuff. But they know how to control themselves. They know how to move. They're very technical and skillful. So, so I think so long as I have a test every now and then with the females, I don't think I need it every single day.
Mm-hmm. And about inspiration, has there been like UFC fighters either in the past or present that sort of they've inspired you, or do you sort of like see yourself as a legacy in the making and concentrate just on yourself? I mean, because we all appreciate good technique and good fighters and so on and so forth, but has there been someone that really inspires you, that you found you followed their career?
So I always say, like, I take a bit of a different outlook on it. Like, I don't really necessarily, obviously I'm very, very inspired by everyone that fights and steps in there and is competing at the highest level. That's where we all aspire to be, and you've got to have mad respect for anyone that does that. But in terms of like actual day-to-day inspiration and motivation and like people that I aspire to be like personally, like it's the people around me. So like the people like Jack Mason, Uriah Faber, and stuff like that. Not necessarily because of their fights. Obviously they're all amazing fighters, all amazing coaches, but also like I see how much hard work they put in. I see them on the mats every single day. I see what they kind of like give to other people as well as what they're putting into themselves, and like that in itself is like, it's more like the behind the scenes that inspires me than the actual fights. Because like say like there's loads of fighters out there, but it's very rare that you get to see like you get to see that professionalism outside of the the cage, and just see everything that goes on behind the scenes. So I feel like the people that I'm surrounded by, like the professional team at Team Alpha Male, and like say I've got Jack Mason and everyone back home, like they're the people that kind of inspire me and motivate me to kind of keep putting in the work and be better.
Do you, Cory, are you one of the sort of fighters? So we seem to have come across two different types of fighters in terms of watching MMA, and there's the kind of the school of thinking where they just watch everything, every second of MMA they can possibly take in, they watch it. And then there's other guys and girls who have kind of like, they'll watch maybe the people around them, their contenders, their division, but apart from that they're not interested. They'll watch back their own fights, but they don't really pay too much attention to it other than that. Where are you on that sort of spectrum in terms of watching MMA?
I'm kind of in the middle. I'm definitely interested in it. I watch the fights, I'll stick them on. But I'm definitely not as I'm not like crazy about it. You know, I've got some friends that will talk to me and they recognize every single fighter in every division. They know the stats. They know the matchups. Me, I don't know the fight card until it's on the TV.
Yeah.
But it's not that I'm not interested in it. Like I watch the fights from almost like a studious kind of like, you know, look, like I'm trying to watch it. I'm trying to learn. I don't necessarily follow it as a fan. I always laugh with the guys and I'm like, I'm a doer, not a watcher. But you know, I'll always watch the cards and I do enjoy them. And like I say, I have respect for everyone that steps in there, but I don't necessarily follow like everyone's careers. I don't know all the drama that's going on outside. I don't follow the news. Like I just watch the fights. If I can, I'll watch them the next day and skip all the ads and all the talking as well. So I just kind of like, I literally just watch the fights.
I'm all about skipping the ads, I got to be honest. There's far too many. We had a couple of questions sent in, and one of them sort of goes in with what Danny said there. Danny asked you about if anyone sort of past or present inspires you. The question we had sent in was, if you could fight any female, past or present, who would it be?
I get asked this one a lot. I really don't have one, and I know that's like in the same way as what I was just saying about me not like watching fights as a fan and everything. Like I'll fight anyone. Not just saying it to sound like stereotypical and cheesy, but like I just really want to fight. So I suppose whoever's the top of the division at the time when I get there. So that'll be who I want to fight. So at the moment, I think that's Scott Wheely. I mean, not right now, obviously. I'll be building up to that for sure. But no, I just want to fight like, you know, the best woman available to me, and just so that way there's no doubt in anyone's minds, you know, when I get there that I am the best. So yeah.
I'm loving that.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah, but could I just ask though, Cory? You know, you say you'll fight anyone and so on and so forth, but I take it, you know, would you still, if you got given an option of fighters, you know, regards career moves, and you felt that maybe, you know, one person might have be a step up, or do you take that into account that one person might be a step up too much and take a slightly safer bet to grow your career? Is that still something that you would still steer to do? Although obviously you would fight anyone, you know, push comes to shove. But if you have the options, would you not, as a career move, take something that would, you know, build your career, being that you're so young as well?
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, I've got like, you know, I've got over 10 years left of fighting in me, so I'm definitely going to be looking at it smart and making business moves. You know, I'm not afraid to fight anybody. Like I'm not interested in can crushing, but I'm also at that level where, you know, no matter who I fight, it's not going to be can crushing. So I always remember and refer back to what one of the lads said to me when I first started fighting. He said to me, you know, a fighter's job is to fight anybody, and the coach and manager's job is to stop them. So that's why I've got Jack. That's why Jack and Uriah, you know, they'll discuss my fights. They'll decide what's the smartest move, and you know, we'll take it from there. But it's kind of like the Kay Hansen fight. We got offered a few fights, and we were both like, well, you know, Kay's really tough. It's a risky fight, but we're both kind of on the rise. So it was kind of one of those fights where it wasn't make or break for either of us. We're gonna fight eventually. So Uriah actually literally looked at me and went, might as well get it out of the way. So that was kind of what we did. So yeah, they definitely discuss things and like consider everything and make sure it's, at the end of the day, you're a business as a fighter. Like, you know, this is my profession, so I've got to make sure that I take the smart fights. But like I say, I'm not afraid of fighting anybody. I'm gonna get round to them all eventually.
Yeah. Right, sure.
I was going to say, Danny, like Cory mentioned there about Zhang Weili being the champion at the moment, and I was thinking, to be honest, she might still be the champion whenever your time comes around to challenge Cory, because she has looked mightily impressive over the last couple of fights. I'm a big fan, and that's a fight I look forward to seeing in the future. I've got to say straight away, I hadn't even thought of it, and then as soon as you mentioned it, I was like, I'll have that fight straight off. So another question we got asked was, do you have a favourite entrance music to come out to for fights, and is it different to music that you would train to or run to?
I walk out to Chelsea Dagger by the Fratellis.
Cracking tune.
I love that song, and yes, when it comes on in the gym, I definitely do spar a lot harder. So no, not different to what music I would listen to, and yeah, like that's my walkout song. That's probably the one I'm going to stick with for quite a while. So I think I've had that for all of my professional fights.
Is that like your sort of musical taste, like indie and sort of that type of stuff? Yeah. Any favorite bands? I've got to ask because I'm
Uh,
obsessed with music.
so I can give you three. I
Go on.
refuse to pick between the Pigeon Detectives, the Kooks, and the Wombats, but
Nice.
they're my top three. I've listened to them since I was like 7, maybe, on my little CD player that I stole off my dad. So yeah, they're probably my favorite bands, but there's
Cool.
plenty out
So,
there.
Danny, what that does confirm is that me and you are old. But yeah, so another question which I found really interesting, which we got sent in, this one was from Gaz. He said, is there any young female fighters that we should be looking out for following you up from either the Welsh or the UK scene coming up next?
There
You
are
on the
so
spot a bit
many.
there now.
I know, there are so many. Who asked that?
Gaz.
There are loads of like amateurs coming up, both male and female. Geez, I'm trying to think. I know that if I say some, I'm going to miss people out, and then I'm going to end up
That's the
like
problem, isn't
offending.
it? You remember like a couple, and then afterwards you'll think,
Yeah.
I'm also terrible. I'm also terrible with names, so I can picture them.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say that there are loads. And I would keep an eye on the IMAF scene, perhaps. They seem to be rising a lot of popularity. There's a ridiculous amount of people coming up. Yeah, actually, the ones I've watched probably. There's been a lot of young, like I say, both male and female on Jack Show, the Cage Warriors Academy Southeast.
Yeah.
He gets some Welsh fighters on there sometimes. But there's also, like you say, there's a lot of up and comers all around England as well. So to be honest, I would just keep an eye on that show. I honestly think Jack puts on one of the best shows in the country, especially for, like you say, the up and comers, the amateurs coming through the scenes. So like I say, I'd keep an eye on them shows and anyone that's been on there really.
Have you seen that
Yeah.
Invictus show that they put on all female bouts? Have you watched much of that?
Yeah, I don't really watch it. I feel like all women's shows are a tricky one, perhaps, for them to run, especially with the UFC taking a lot of the upper end of the talent pool.
Yeah, because it seems to become, how Cage Warriors. Sorry to interrupt you. Cage Warriors seems to become a feeder show, hasn't it, for the UK scene or European scene to therefore get into UFC. Invictus has become a little bit of a female route, regardless of where you come from. So that they run all their events and they get their champion, and inevitably the champions go off to UFC. I just get the impression it's become a bit of a feeder show, really. So they're going to get a champion and they're very quickly going to drop the title and go off to UFC. Not that that's a bad thing, but it's just something that I'd watch because, like I say, I love seeing the female bouts and seeing such new talent coming up and through. And one time when I was out in Dubai on UFC, they had the Invictus channel. It's just playing stuff hour after hour. And I sat there for a good few hours watching some of these female talents. And some of the levels were really quite varied, but some of them were definitely talents that I'm expecting to see come up through to the UFC at some point.
Yeah, like you say, I think it started off as obviously a rival show to the UFC almost, because obviously it was around when they weren't really having female fights in the UFC. And then once it kind of started introducing that, it became a feeder. I think things are changing a little bit at the moment. Like I know there's a lot of women obviously on like LFA and other kind of large American promotions that have kind of become a feeder. So I know things are shifting a lot. But like you say, like the talent's very varied on Invicta, mainly because I think it's, like I say, it's very difficult to run an all-female show when a lot of the higher level athletes have obviously moved on to the UFC and everything. I think they almost like waters it down a little bit because they have to find girls to fill those cards. Yeah, I mean, like I say, I feel like the all-female things, maybe, like I said, with the small talent pool, it's quite difficult for them to do. But I like watching the UFC fights because I feel like because there's less of them, it's almost like a higher level, if that makes sense, like a higher quality. Yeah. Whereas, like I say, there's not as many women out there, so for them to fill an entire card with females, they kind of got to like have anybody. Yeah, so not knocking Invicta. I'm gonna get so much grief for this.
No.
But no, I don't really watch it. No.
At the end of the day, it's just a great way for the females to gain experience and to build their records, or to find out where they're at the end of the day. So I think without shows like Invictus, it would make the expansion of the female fighters in the UFC a lot slower and more painful process. I think it's good to have these shows. And yeah, okay, the talent pool is really, really varied, but I just think it's going to be nothing but a positive thing. And okay, I think ultimately UFC is where most people want to be. We was discussing last week, wasn't we, Si? You have to be a UFC champion to be respected, to be one of the best in the world. Well, not necessarily. You've got Theodore that's done amazing things and created legendary status with his performances. So not necessarily entirely true, although I do think in the modern day fighter's perspective, UFC is sort of like becoming the ultimate goal for many.
Do you think that's interesting, though? And I guess I asked both of you this. Like, I think for male athletes and fighters, you can, so like using Fedor as an example, he's managed to be regarded as one of the best fighters in the world without being in the UFC. Whereas, do you think it's harder for a female fighter to achieve that? Because Bellator, I don't think, do any female fights, or if they do very little. You've got Invicta. Cage Warriors, I think, has done minimal. They don't do a great deal of the female fighters. So, like, there isn't... Like, you've got all the regional shows and stuff in America and around Europe, but generally there's not as many kind of big companies outside of the UFC who are doing female fights. So it would be very difficult then, in turn, to be considered one of the best female fighters in the world without going to the UFC, because that's where all the best fighters are. Would you say, Cory? I don't know. I'm asking. Interested.
Bellator definitely do female fights. There's been loads of females.
Yeah, of course they do, because they did Cyborg. Sorry. Right.
Yeah, and like Kate Jackson and that were on it. So they're definitely expanding, especially with Bellator Europe. Like, you got like Danny Nealon from Ireland. She was on it. There's a lot of girls in the Bellator scene for sure. Again, there's been a lot of girls on LFA that have just come into the UFC. Or the girl that I fought on Contenders was LFA champ, and people were like kind of hyping her up a lot. Which is kind of where I was coming on the Invicta front, is where I feel like maybe we don't need an all-female show. I kind of err on the side of it's a bit hypocritical if you didn't want an all-male show as well. But I think there's equal opportunities these days. I think people are like maybe a little bit more sensitive towards it, but there's definitely equal opportunities. There is just less women. It's just something that's got to be accepted. Like, it's easy to say Cage Warriors didn't have many female fights on, but people don't realize how difficult it was to find opponents. Like, I was contracted to them. We were flying girls in from everywhere. We would ask everybody around Europe, and there just wasn't really that many girls available to us. Especially once you get to a certain level, like you say, like the window just closes and closes. So
yeah, of course.
I think it's easy for people to sit back and say, oh, there's not many women's fights on, but like, it's, there's probably hundreds of thousands of men out there fighting, and there's like, a couple hundred women. Like, it's so much different. So yeah, I wouldn't say there's really that much of a discrepancy at all between the genders. It's just proportionate.
Yeah, I suppose as well. And apologies to Bellator as well, because I had a complete brain fart and just wiped their female division from my mind for a couple of seconds there. So I do apologise about that. But yeah, I suppose, and like when there's only, like you say, a few hundred fighters to choose from, and all the best fighters go to the UFC, which is natural because they're the biggest promotion in the world, so they're going to want, the top talent, the best fighters there. It is going to be really difficult for Cage Warriors and to a lesser extent Bellator, but obviously all the various regional shows, to be able to put on multiple female fights on a card, because you can't put fights on if you haven't got the fighters to do it. So that must have been quite a frustrating issue for you, Cory, whereby you were ready to fight, and when, like with Cage Warriors, for instance, you were ready to fight, you wanted to fight, but it's trying to kind of find someone who's willing to fight and to find the fighters on the level, if you like. Was that a frustrating time in one way for you?
Yeah, well, I used to try and be proactive with it. It's definitely something like my dad would encourage and actually help me with. Like, I'd be sending Jack names, I'd be sending the matchmakers names. I'd be like, look, like, you don't have to look for them. I'm like, they're here. Just message these people. Yeah, definitely. Like, like before the contenders, I think I had a year and a half off, and it was like for completely for reasons like out of my control. Like,
Yeah.
the like girl missed weight by a stupid amount of weight, and then like they pushed my fight back, which meant I then missed it because of COVID, and then just kind of like just stupid stuff that affected everybody, like for the most part, like, especially the COVID stuff. But like I say, I've had a lot of problems with like pull outs and everything, especially my amateur career. Like I used to refuse to answer the phone on fight week if Jack would call, because I knew that meant my girl had pulled out. And in my head, I was like, if I don't answer the phone, it didn't happen.
Yeah.
So like, like Jack would ring me and my dad would look at me and be like, what? And I'd be like all teary eyed, like, I know what this means. So yeah, like it's very difficult to find female opposition. I've been very fortunate in my setup. Like I say, I had Jack running the BCM the Cage Warriors Academy. And he would fly girls in. He'd fly girls from Poland. I had girls from Sweden. Like he would just fly them in. Like I'd we've offered to pay for opponents on so many occasions. Like just to get me fights. So
Yeah.
it's definitely hard. And like I said, I've definitely been fortunate in my career path. So I can't complain. But yeah, it's definitely a challenge, especially in Europe.
Yeah, of course. There's some real good fighters in Europe, female and male, at the moment, and a few of the top end of that sort of scene. They do seem to be having issues matching up fighters. Like we had Jake Haley on a couple of episodes ago, and like he was saying that like he didn't feel like there was anyone on his level now to fight, which becomes another problem then, doesn't it? Like finding someone to fight, Dan.
Yeah. I mean, I've experienced the same difficulties throughout my career, although I come from a different, I come from a different era, really. But because it was expanding at the time, and I'd beaten the best there was around you, it become quite difficult to get opponents. And back from my time, everyone was trying to protect their records more, which made people reluctant to take fights that they felt like wasn't suitable for them to continue to grow their own records. But so I do understand how frustrating it is. I mean, it actually led to my retirement in the end, because I was fighting, between a year and a half and 2 years gap in between, purely because there was not the pool of fighters, which is the state and position that the females are in, which is going to get better. It got better after I retired, and things really changed, and things have opened up, and you can pack out your fight record with no real issues. But yeah, the females are kind of going through that era and that sort of process at the moment, but it will get better. And I just wish, and I hope that UFC just put on as a co-main event at least a little bit more, because the female fights are a little bit more rare and not so frequent. We should perhaps feature them on the main card a little bit more often to get that attention out there.
Yeah, there's some top fighters as well in the UFC. Some real good and entertaining fighters as well, mate.
Yeah, I mean, you said it yourself, didn't you? That we think about 3 of the best fights of the year last year. In the top 5 were female fights. They put on some absolute incredible spectacles of technique and toughness, intelligence, and I can't wait to see more females, pack out those divisions. There's going to be really interesting matchups in the near future, I'm sure.
100%. Cory, I've got one more question from me, and then I've got one more question from JD, who sent it in. It's a bit of a fun one. Are you all right to answer them, or do you need to go?
Oh yeah, I'm all right to answer them. I just always get nervous when people say fun questions.
Yeah, well,
not be that fun.
Like I should say, it's, maybe not. Maybe fun's the wrong word. Just like
fun
not too serious. Not too serious.
Okay.
I should say. So I'll give you the choice. Would you like the more sort of formal, serious question first, or do you want the one which is fun?
Surprise me, I'll figure it out.
Okay. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I'd like to have that strap around my waist. I think 5 years is plenty of time. Like I say, I'm in no rush, but if not, at least in the top 3,
Yeah. If you had the choice of like who was champion when you come to take it, is there a particular fighter up at the top at the moment who you think I'd like to fight them?
I think, like we discussed earlier, Wheelie's been looking absolute class. I think she's arguably, one of the best female fighters out there at the moment. So it'd be pretty cool if she's still around. Like you say, I want to fight whoever the best is, in everyone's head. So maybe I can catch her before she retires.
Absolutely. Okay, so JD says we've seen a lot of celebrity back and forths with fighters. He did put celebrity in quotation marks with Jake Paul insulting Conor McGregor's wife. Obviously, we've got Ben Askren fighting one of them. I think it's Jake Paul in a boxing fight. And he said, first of all, what's your opinion of kind of YouTube stars or celebrities getting involved in MMA and boxing? And second of all, he said, which female or male YouTube star would you like to fight? Or YouTube or celebrity would you like to fight?
I don't know any.
Yeah, that's the problem I would have. Yeah, that's the problem I'd have if you ask me.
Not everyone follows that sort of thing.
No.
Yeah, my knowledge of all the other stuff is purely on the extent of memes that I've seen people's stories. I also forgot what the first part of that question was.
Oh, you just said what's your opinion of like the kind of celebrities and YouTubers sort of
people are not real fighters
coming over into the fight game.
I'm not against it so long as they're like training hard and they're taking it serious and they're not just doing it for a bit of hype. But my thing was I don't think they should get special treatment just because of who they are. Like if you want to fight, like if you genuinely if it's something you want to do, regardless of who you are, I think you should have the opportunity to do it. But you should have to work your way up. Like everybody else. 100%. So you can't just make some stupid videos on YouTube or whatever that dude's doing, and then get a really high level fight. And I mean, hey, if he's getting the payday and he's making it work for him for sure, and he's probably a bit nuts if he's not training hard for it. But I think there shouldn't be any special treatment. Like you say, I think the sport's great for everybody, and the opportunity should be there for everybody. You can't just pick and choose who does it. But I think everybody should start off from square one and work their way up for sure.
The other thing I wanted to very quickly ask you, which I just kind of thought of this now, was we see in the male divisions, you see quite a lot of not all the time, but at various points there's a bit of going back and forth on the mic, and it can get quite personal, and there can be a bit of animosity between certain characters and certain fighters. Why do you think we don't see that so much on the female side?
Have you seen women trash talk? Bloody awful. I remember I'm honest, I remember Joanna trying a bit of trash talk, and I was just sat there like, oh no. I mean, you don't see as much. I feel like maybe women get a little bit. I don't know. I can get away with saying this. I'm a girl, so it's all right. They get a little bit more emotional. Things get a little bit more petty, and so I feel like the guys are a bit more open to having a bit of banter and a bit of a laugh. Me and the guys are always ripping each other in the gym. I'm definitely not thin-skinned, but the women's division, I've yet to see anybody where they've actually had a decent bit of trash talk and some actual humor. But you never know. Maybe I can come out the woodwork one day.
Well, look, I wouldn't have said that, and I doubt Danny would have. But because you said it,
I said what you were thinking.
Yeah, well, Cyborg tried a bit of trash talking, didn't she, before? And then when she got some back, she sort of took a ball and went home. She didn't like it. But, in my opinion, if you're going to give it, you've got to take it back as well. And lastly, I wanted to ask you about your art, because I saw some of that today, and it is phenomenal.
Thank you.
It was really cool. One of the guys who I do a podcast with is an ex-footballer, and he does a bit of art just to sort of keep himself busy after retiring from football. And he's really good as well. But I looked at yours and I was just like, wow, that is incredible. Is that something you've always done?
I've kind of drawn and painted since I was a kid. Just a bit of a hobby. a sketch pad's easy to take to the gym and do between sessions, you know. So, and also being a broke fighter for my entire life, it's also a lot cheaper to gift people something thoughtful than it is something valuable. So, no, but I used to just paint canvases for my family and, you know, for myself and everything. And once I kind of like got the UFC call, obviously got a little bit of a better following, so I started posting some more because they started gaining a bit of popularity. And yeah, it's just kind of seeing where I can take that as well.
Can people purchase some of your art as well?
Yep, I'm currently working on setting up like a website. I want to build a base of stuff on there that's available to like buy, or like I can do copies of and everything. I'm looking into doing that. I'm currently working on a lot of like I've had quite a few kind of requests that I'm working on, slowly working my way through. You know, the gym's my priority, but I'm obviously, you know, I really enjoy doing that, and you know, it means a lot that people obviously, you know, like them and appreciate them enough to ask me to do stuff for them. So this is my side hustle, as Faber keeps telling me.
Cool. Okay, tell the people, Cory, where they can find you on social media, etc.
Cory McKenna 99 on Twitter and Instagram. I have an art page which is Poppins Paintings. Given we just spoke about that, and I have a Facebook page for Cory McKenna. So nice and simple.
Cool. Yeah, I'll link all that below as well, below the episode, so you can go straight to that, check out Cory's art, and follow her on social media. Cory, thank you so much for joining us. Really, really appreciate your time, and it's been good fun.
Thanks for having me.
It's been awesome talking to you, and good luck with the injury. I'm sure it won't hold you back, but certainly be patient, because you're certainly young enough to put that patience into play, and you'll be fine. Look forward to following your career.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, Cory.
Right, cheers, Cory.
Cory McKenna, Danny Batten. That was a good one. I enjoyed that.
She's lovely girl.
Very articulate.
Yeah.
And you straight away you could tell, like with so many of these fighters, they know what they want, and they're very focused on getting it, and how they're going to get there. But like I was impressed with, she's got her head screwed on, real like sensible. Like even when we talked about like future fights, and she mentioned Zhang Weili, who was obviously the champion, but it wasn't like I would take that fight tomorrow. It was, you know, I'm not afraid that I would fight anyone, but maybe now's not the right time. I want to build up to that, and I think that is quite a refreshing attitude for any fighter to have, because it's very easy to fall into that kind of like, oh yeah, I'd take that fight tomorrow, and you know, I'd fight anyone, and even if maybe now isn't the right time, because that's like almost that fighter mentality, isn't it? Is fighters will fight anyone, and they want to fight for titles, and
that's what I love about the MMA fight game, really. You're probably going to get your odd fighter that's avoiding another fighter. I suppose that can happen, but it's such a rarity. But initially, if there's interesting matchups to happen, they inevitably happen. You know, you don't get one MMA fighter running away from another. Of course, you've got to pick the right fights for your career growth, like we was discussing earlier with Cory. But I like that about MMA. Everyone's really honest and willing to put it on the line to find out really who's where.
Yeah, 100%, mate. So just before we go into UFC 258, I wanted to just quickly go through a couple of little news bits with you, get your opinion on them. First and foremost, Dana White has said that they're looking to do McGregor versus Poirier 3 this summer, but it won't be for a title. But it looks like it's on. Are you a bit surprised by that?
I am a little bit surprised, but I think there will be interest for it, actually, because, you know, McGregor's had so much time in and out of MMA. You know, maybe it would have shaken off any potential rust that he could blame it on, I suppose, you know, if you want to look at it that way. They want a piece. So, put it on. Let's see the trilogy of that.
Yeah, 100%. What else we got? So Bobby Green was due to fight Jim Miller on last night's UFC 258 card, but during the weigh-ins, Bobby Green collapsed backstage. So that fight was yanked from the card. Don't know too much about it. I assume it's probably something to do with the weight cut. unfortunately. It's just one of those things, you know. Maybe in years gone by, if he was up and about quite quickly afterwards, you know, like I'm talking a long time ago, maybe 10 years ago, he probably still would have fought. But it's the right decision. If any fighters, you know, collapsing or struggling that much during a weight cut, that's just got to be. You've got to protect the fighters from themselves, haven't you? At certain points. Hopefully they'll put that fight back on though at some point, because that is it looked like a good. That's
a good matchup. Yeah, that's definitely a good matchup.
And then the other bit of news: Chimaev versus Leon Edwards is off again. Look, mate, I'd bin that fight. I really would, because I just think it's not happening at the moment. At least for the moment, I would bin it, because it's just delaying Leon Edwards more and more, having to keep waiting.
It's not good for him.
I do feel a bit for Chimaev, because apparently Chimaev is having real problems with COVID. He can't. He's having trouble shaking it, and you know, obviously, I think it was his manager said that at one point he thought he was going to die. It was that bad. Wow. So it does sound like, you know, it's not a case of him, you know, trying to avoid the fight or anything like that. It sounds like he's genuinely having some issues with the COVID. Dana White is looking to put on Leon Edwards versus Colby Covington. He said that makes sense as a potential next match next month, as early as that. So that would be an incredible fight. And then lastly, 6th of March, UFC 259, the main event of Jan Blachowicz versus Israel Adesanya. And you know who our guest is on the 7th of March, don't you? It's only a certain scouser who's always got plenty to say. So that'll be an interesting weekend for us, mate, that one. I'm really looking forward to that. It's going to be a great one. But I've contacted a couple of people there again now, the last couple of days. I tried to contact Leon Edwards as well. But I don't know if that'll come about. We'll have to wait and see. But hopefully, if he ever sees this, Leon Edwards, get in touch with us, because we'd love to interview you.
That'd be pretty good. We
talk about you enough, so we'd love to get your take on it. But let's get into the card from last night. As you know, mate, and as regular viewers will know, we tend to focus on the main card. But there was 2 fights that I asked you to check out on the prelims. So the first one was Belal Muhammad defeated Diego Lima via unanimous decision, 30-27 all across the board. Diego Lima, obviously brother of Douglas Lima. I really enjoyed this fight. I thought it was phenomenal in like different ways. Like for instance, I thought Diego Lima's leg kicks were incredible, but he was really struggling to do anything outside of that apart from the odd shot. He couldn't get any momentum going throughout the fight. And Belal Muhammad, wow, he was just non-stop pressure. And that was the most impressive I think he's looked physically. It's the most impressive I've seen him in a fight. Like, you know, his stamina is always going to be incredible. It always is. Yeah. But the pace that he took Diego Lima apart, just took him apart, and I really enjoyed the fight. It was a pretty dominant victory for Belal Muhammad, and I really would like to, you know, he was the ranked fighter going into the fight, but I'd really like to see him face someone now with a bit of who's going to test him, because he looked good.
Yeah, he did look good, and oh my goodness, you know, he was really eating up some of those leg kicks. He was switching stance on occasions, was a little less effective when he was switching his stance to southpaw. So he'd go back to his main stance again, taking the risk of being leg kicked again, but he literally squeezed the leg kicks out of Lima eventually. But I think a lesser fighter would have been put out by those leg kicks, but the pressure was relentless, the cardio was relentless. I think the key to his success really is the way that he don't explode his combinations. He's sort of like, you know, hitting singles, doubles, triples, and you know, maybe up to 4 hit strikes, but none of them with full bore. You know, he's just staying so close. You don't have to rush in, rush out. He's not wasting any energy with slick footwork. He's literally just squeezing you down. You know, you've got a choice: stand and trade in the middle by not backing off, or back off and try and find something on the counter. But Lima looked like he was going to find success with that leg kick. It really was troubling Mohammed at one point, but yeah, Mohammed's just so tough. I mean, yeah, he did limp a little bit. He did get a little bit light on the leg, to shoot in, to mix it up, to have opportunities. But the other thing that I want to point out with Lima, his leg kicks were amazing, and his takedown defense as well, which I think is something that's been a little bit of a weakness in his previous,
improved a lot,
approach to UFC. Yeah, he's really nailed that down. He done very, very well. Mohammed's good everywhere. He's a great wrestler as well, and to defend the amount that he did whilst under that barrage of attacks was utterly impressive by Lima. But having good defense doesn't win you fights, and he was just banking on those leg kicks, having something to say in regards to changing the result. It just wasn't to be, but so nearly was. So was it a bad strategy? Not necessarily. I think maybe he needed more rounds to get those leg kicks to perhaps be consequential enough to switch the result round. But no, it wasn't to be. Mohammed nailed it down, and Mohammed is looking that strong. I think he's ready to break through into some of the serious people. Yeah. And I think we're going to still see some successes even when he steps up.
Yeah, I agree, mate. And I got to say, by the way, the other fight I asked you to take a look at was the Fluffy Anthony Hernandez versus Dolfo Vieira, which Hernandez won by a submission and a guillotine choke about 2 minutes into round 2. But boy, oh boy, this was fascinating to watch. But one thing that this does, mate, this goes to prove that if you're going into the UFC thinking that you can be a world-class BJJ or just a world-class striker and you can live just off that, you can't. You cannot do it. You have to have an all-round skill set. And Anthony Hernandez is a purple belt in BJJ, and he choked out one of the best BJJ practitioners in the world, in Vieira, and he did it convincingly in the end, mate.
Yeah, in the end it was. It was literally one of two ways. It was either one dominating the other while he had the energy to do so, but then when the coin flipped, it was complete dominance in reverse. You're right. You can't just go in there with one skill set anymore. There's the odd standout in certain fighters, but you can't just be a jiu-jitsu world champion and have it on the ground and expect to just win. It's just not going to be the case. Now, when Vieira began to gas, this is like what we put the athletes through regards to the pros. We get the amateurs to Shark Tank them, and the Shark Tank is designed to push all the energy and technique to such a degree that they do begin to foul, and you'll start getting the amateurs tap them out, take them down, depending on what that Shark Tank really is. It's designed to make you physically foul and learn to survive at deficit. And that was the case, really. That's why he got submitted. I mean, if they was going to roll rounds of just submission, this would never happen. But the fact that this is MMA, and he appeared to have let it all out in that first dominant spell that he had on the ground trying to hunt for that arm triangle, he clearly took something out of himself. I think it was a combination of trying to go for that arm triangle and trying to do that upside down arm bar, or inverted arm bar, facing down to the ground. Then he turned it into a big flip and sweep, created some chaotic movements, and I just think he ran his muscles out too quickly. I just think he had a big deficit of lactic acid, because he's certainly big at the weight, a strong lad at the weight, as well as being really technical gifted. But like the Shark Tanks do, once you're exhausted, once you're really super tired and you can't get into a state of recovery, man, your belt level drops. Suddenly you'll get blue belts tapping out black belts, and that's kind of what we witnessed there, really. He just got so exhausted, he just could not fend off the attacks coming at him.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing many fighters look as tired as he did, like at the end of that first round, coming out for the second. Like, he looked like he was so tired he couldn't even lift his arms. Look, and I'm sure he'll go away and he'll think about the mistakes that he made and this, that, and the other. But at certain points, mate, in that first couple of minutes, he was milliseconds away from winning
Really was, yeah.
And it could have been such a different night for him. Like, he could have choked him out or put that triangle on him in the first minute, looked super impressive, and everyone would have been talking about how dangerous a fighter he is.
Yeah. I mean, certainly, you could look at this in boxing matches. You can come out and try and knock the guy out in the first 3 rounds, but if you foul, you still got another 9 rounds to get through if you're fighting up at that level with 12 rounds. It's going to be great on your highlight reel. If you do stuff the guy away, it's going to look great. But if you don't, it's going to be a long night and you're probably going to lose. So that's the way up, really. You can do the same in submission. You can put force along with technique to try and get the job done. But if it don't pull off and you've put the force in and you get into a position of deficit, the difference with MMA is, you're not just scrambling positions, you're scrambling positions and getting hit. And they're scrambling up, they're disengaging. You've got to re-wrestle again. It's a different sport in its own right. But I actually think there was probably an underlying issue with the way he's cut weight, or the fact that he's cut too much weight and maybe didn't rehabilitate properly to be that tired at this level of athleticism, because there is nothing wrong with his athletic capabilities. We've seen that in the past. But I just think he's got something wrong in terms of the weight cut, maybe trying to be too much of the bigger man. And
he is big, isn't he?
Yeah,
for that
he is
weight.
really, really big and thick set, highly muscled. And it really went against him this time around. Could have looked so good. I mean, come on, we could have been sat here so easily talking about the arm triangle finish, or that inverted armbar.
High level jiu-jitsu is, and it could have been different.
As a technical thing to point out, I think Vera, when he went for that belly down armbar, I think he should have kept the shin over the back of the head to force the roll. So he had the armbar attempt off of his back, and then could have scrambled for a top position, controlled the pace, and at least nipped the round away and had sense of recovery by being in a dominant position. But he allowed it to be still chaotic. Now, when you're trying to do a belly down armbar and you don't choose to do the shin over the top of the head and you go in front of the face, which is pointed down, and they're going to be on top unless you create some chaos. And he had to create some chaos, which obviously is losing control and keeping the pace fast. You can't keep attacking. You're going to fatigue at some point. I think we saw a good dabble of that with that
Joe
match.
Rogan seemed quite surprised that he didn't put his shin over the back of his head. Like he said, he's going to put his shin over the back of his head now for this armbar, and then he didn't do it. And he sort of caught himself then, Joe Rogan, on commentary, and was like, oh, he could do that. But he seemed surprised that he didn't go with that route of doing it, I suppose.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can do it the way what Vera was going for. You can do it that way, but the reason why the shin over the top of the head would be considered a little bit better is because you get other transitions. You can finish belly down, but you can also force the roll, and they roll over, and then you'll be effectively like you're coming off a mount for an armbar. You're going to have another shot at that submission. But yeah, he chose the route which was, all that or nothing, and he lost control and had to scramble up to the feet. And this is keeping his heart rate and his muscles working hard, and he went into major deficit.
I think it's big performance and big result for Fluffy Hernandez. I really felt like this was almost like a bit of a coming out party for him. Like in terms of this was a big fight for him, big opponent, someone who's highly skilled, and like generally his defense against those, there was a couple of ominous positions which Vieira had, and Hernandez got out of them. He didn't run out of time before he tapped him out. He did sort of twist and roll, and he wriggled his way out, and I think he deserves credit for being capable of doing that and then going on to see the fight home.
Yeah, look, submissions and putting the fight away regards grappling, that takes a lot of learning, a lot of process to develop, but it doesn't take much to develop defensive skills and avoidance skills of these submissions, regards being an MMAist. So if that was just a grappling match, obviously he's still fighting in the hot frying pan. He's going to get burnt at some point and constantly, but because this is an MMA, it don't take much to know how to defend, and you can disengage the ground. You don't have to be there. So not only is the grappler trying to create the submission sweeps or whatever situation he wants to create for himself on the ground, the fact is the other guy might not want to be there and don't have to play it. It's not like a grappling tournament where you have to engage. He could choose just not to. And so you're fighting to keep it down on the ground with someone that's looking to keep scrambling up, and that's the kind of issue that we saw here. You have to be well-rounded. There's no two ways about it. always do your attacks with no expectation that they're always going to work. Of course, throughout the attacks, because you've got to play the game with regards to whether this is going to be striking, whether it's going to be shooting for a takedown, always do it with full vigor. I get you should do that, but never have an expectation it's always going to work, so that you're always thinking ahead of the if question, And I felt like, the submissions were being applied in such a way that he was expecting to get it so much that when it didn't, he got lost. He become panicked. It was like a strong swimmer realizing he's caught in a tide that was taking him out, and no matter how strong you are, you can't get back. He's going to panic too. And and great for Hernandez. This is brilliant for him. He's
good stuff,
brought himself right up into relevancy now. He'd be on the main card next time around, I'm sure of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So going on to the main card, we started off with Julian Marquez versus Mackie Patolo. I was looking forward to this one. It didn't really disappoint. Marquez defeated Patolo via submission anaconda choke, 4 minutes 17 into the third round.
Yeah, I mean, if you watch the beginning of this fight, you would never think that result was going to be the way it was.
No.
Patolo come out really hard. And what I liked about this is something that I've been covering with some of my pro fighters, is to start out a little different from you typically would. So don't always come out in your normal stance. Maybe come out in your opposite stance and throw some attacks off from the opposite stance that land you back into your comfortable stance, so you can then come back out from your combination. He come out opposite stance to throw those body kicks, and this was quite clever because it very nearly caught Marquez out completely cold, and it looked like he was really, really under pressure. But Marquez maybe put a little bit too much energy again. Again, this is someone who's not managing his energy levels very well, because the latter part of that first round, Marquez started really getting it together and coming back at Patolo. I still think Patolo won that first round though.
Yeah, I think so.
But coming into that second round, again, Patolo come out looking quite good, but Marquez had plenty of time where he was in the dominant position. It's actually looking quite good for Marquez. Now, Marquez was on the back, wasn't he, at one point? And I don't know whether it was a case of him losing his balance a little bit or going for the armbar. I think it's more of a case that he lost his balance off the back. He just didn't position himself well, and a couple of sloppy decisions. Now, I'm going to put that down to the fact that it's been a while since he's been in there, and I just think he lost a little tightness and made some mistakes in his decision making because of that. I think now he's got back in. As long as he gets another fight in the next coming months, I think he would have got rid of any potential rust that I saw that night. But he started coming on really, really strong. Patolo just looked like he began to fade each round. Marquez was looking proper tired too, but just looked more comfortable with the fact that, hey, I'm in deep water, you're in deep water, I'm more comfortable there than you are. And he kept coming forward, kept pushing through, and of course Marquez got the finish. That's a great return for him after that kind of time out from the cage.
Yeah, like I thought it was interesting. Patolo's coach said to him going into the last round, just don't make a mistake. And Marquez's coach said, you need to finish.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that's kind of what it came down to. Marquez went and got the finish. And Patolo, did he make a mistake? Did he tire? I don't know. I'll leave that one up to the experts to decide.
Sure.
But it's interesting that what the coach said, and then how it kind of went on.
It can make the
Patolo
difference.
Loses that round but doesn't get finished, I think he probably wins the fight.
Possibly so, yeah, possibly so. And you're right. This is when you're in the fight itself. You can't see the bigger
margins.
Picture. Yeah, and that's for the coach's experience to say the right type of thing, knowing what's going to inspire that fighter to do the right thing in that final round. And you quite possibly we witnessed something there that was said to do different fighters, and might have edged it. It might be that last thing that you needed to hear to push out and get the win.
Yeah, and I mean, we just talked about the Fluffy Hernandez and Vieira, how that fight could have been, very different just by
absolutely
a couple of seconds. So it's really fascinating stuff, mate. I got to say. Next up was Ricky Simone versus Brian Keller. This was moved from the main card after Bobby Green, which we discussed just now, with claps backstage. Ricky Simone, impressive again, mate.
My goodness, didn't he?
Decision 30-27 all across the board.
Yeah, he looked great. He was using his hands, boxing to the head, boxing to the body. He was throwing in those low point kicks. He was wrestling. He was really demonstrating his full dexterity of MMA. I think maybe in the past we've seen him work just his striking, but we saw a little bit of everything from him against Brian Keller. Brian Keller's, he's a strong guy. He's someone that can put you away with one punch. And Ricky Simone was doing enough without opening himself up to get caught. Now, in saying that, he did get caught down the centre line numerous times with that front face teep that could have been nasty had one hit the right mark. I think Brian Keller, once he did it the first time and then he scored it the second time, this encouraged him to keep throwing that teep up to the face. But to be honest, that was kind of like boiling down to being all that he had left to throw at him to get success. I mean, Simone just shut everything down. It was a truly impressive strategical match by him, technical match by him, and great conditioning to attack as frequently as he did, but also the maturity that he seemed to demonstrate. Like I say, he didn't overrun himself like we've talked about just in those previous fights. He was working a good pace, but a good pace where he was always really super sharp. He never ever ran himself ragged where he would get himself tired. He was always actively working in proactive positions, but where he kept control. He had control at all times, whether it was on the feet, whether it was in the clinch, standing, wrestling, or whether he got it on the ground. He just kind of just smothered his way to victory. It was utterly impressive. It really, really was.
It was indeed, mate. Ricky Simone's had an impressive couple of fights. Next up was Kelvin Gastelum defeating Ian Hunch via unanimous decision. This was close, 30-27, 29-28, 29-28. We discussed this one last week and we weren't sure which Kelvin Gastelum was going to turn up. Which one did?
Well, yeah, the good one and the best one I've ever seen, to be honest. And I say that because of how he mixed it up. He normally just relies on his striking. And of course, he's a difficult customer because he's southpaw for one and generates a lot of power for a small guy. And he keeps walking forward. He's a fearless attacker, a fearless hunter. We saw some of that, but the way he mixed up the wrestling against another very, very good wrestler, Heinisch is a good and big at the weight as well. He's not a small guy. He can wrestle. No. He can strike a little bit. But to me, he just looked. Heinisch just looked a little rough around the edges technically. He was just lacking a little something in the striking. He was lacking something in the wrestling, lacking a little bit on his ground offensive. Yeah, and I think that was just all too much in combination with the fact that Gastelum was just looking on fire. He was making really good decisions. He wasn't relying purely on his striking. He was mixing up, shooting in, and doing some amazing takedowns. Some of his takedowns were borderline slams. He was getting so underneath the center of gravity on Heinisch and taking him down. It just showed the confidence in his transitions, really. And I think one-on-one, Heinisch is a better wrestler on paper, but the fact that Gastelum was forcing the mix with his hands, he was getting those clean entries and making him look like a complete MMA in every degree. I just hope that he maintains this type of form and this type of decision making in his next fights, because he can bring himself back up into being taken seriously. I mean, it's not an easy fight for anyone at any time, Gastelum, but I just feel like he become a little bit too predictable in what he was wanting and how he would go about it in each fight, and people just work against that in a strategic sense in preparation for their training for him. With this one, he's going to be a much harder Gastelum to figure out, because he's going to bring everything to the table: wrestling, grappling, and his grappling looked good, really did look good. And we know, his striking's already good anyway. So yeah, keep Gastelum like this and he'll be getting back up into the higher ranks, and we'll see him in in that sort of top 5 rank again. What was Heinisch's rank? Because he's sort of just coming up into the ranks. What do you remember what he was? I can't remember.
I'd have to
and he worked himself up.
I
that
agree
close
with you,
to
though.
Gastelum.
I thought Gastelum looked about as impressive as he has ever. So, was it heavyweight or light heavyweight? No, middleweight, isn't it?
No, middleweight. Yeah, no, not as heavy as that.
Middleweight.
Yeah.
Let's have a look. Middleweights, which obviously we've got that massive fight coming up from the middleweight division.
Yeah, and while you're having a look on there, I just want to say they both had attacks with hammerlocks on each other, and when they're doing this, they're both doing it with their thumbs holding around the wrist, either their own wrist or the opponent's wrist. Now, I don't particularly like that variation. Right, okay, yeah. I wonder whether it's obviously broke into top 15 to be able to face up against someone like Gastelum. I wasn't too sure, but what I was saying was the Camara attacks. Now they're doing it with their thumbs around. Now I don't particularly like that variation in MMA, or in no-gi grappling for that matter, because your hands are wrapped, you're wearing gloves as well, and it weakens your grip. It enables people to drive their arm out straight. Now, if you put your thumbs against your fingers and hold in what we call a paddle, I don't know whether there is another technical name. This is just a name that I put to it. But we do our hammerlocks with paddles, and it strengthens your fingers so that they can't straighten the arm so easily. So that was just something that I saw that it doesn't favour what I would think will lead to success with those hammerlocks and Camara attacks that those both doing on each other. To me, those both making that statement, it made it so that really that it was never going to happen for them. I think if they made that small little change, I think they would be more effective in those attacks if they want them in future fights that they have. They could have perhaps put the fight away if they had made that small adaptation.
Interesting, mate. That's why you're on for the technical analysis, mate. And I challenge anyone to give me technical analysis as good as that, mate.
Oh man, that's amazing. Honestly, there's amazing guys out there. There really is. Trust me on that.
Nah, don't say that, mate. You gotta.
I'm just being honest.
Sell the show. Sell us.
I am good, though, Si. But there is some real talents out there. There really is.
You are good. You are great, mate. That's why we do this thing. But next up was Alexa Grasso versus Macy Barber. Unanimous decision to Grasso, 29-28 all around. And the ladies did not disappoint again.
I loved this fight. This fight was really good. Now, I think I went for Mace Barber, didn't I, for the win on this one?
You did, and I went for Alexa Grasso.
Yeah, and this is because Grasso was coming up a weight, I believe. She would always had really hard weight cuts, but I believe that she'd come up a weight, and that's why I went against her on this one. I wasn't sure whether she was going to be strong enough or big enough at this weight, but I think the fact that she didn't have to kill herself perhaps making weight so much, she just had so much energy about her, and I think that's what Barber initially really suffered with the fact that Grasso was just constantly working and wriggling and moving. Now, so I feel like Barber was really losing on work rate and technical crispness in combinations with the striking against Grasso, and she started slipping herself away. I felt like she had to make a bigger size matter by really trading in there and really pressing. So striking and clinching, break back free again, striking, clinch, maybe do a takedown attempt. We started to see that in the third round, and I feel like Barber won that third round, but I feel like she figured out Grasso a little bit too late. Maybe if this was a 5-round fight, that would have been really interesting. I would have loved to have seen another continuing 2 rounds between these two. But Grasso was really, really impressive. But likewise, I'd never write someone like Mace Barber off. She's still absolutely relevant. The thing I didn't like about her game was that she was mucking around so far out of range, which I think the commentators picked up on, and that was kind of frustrating to me. Like I say, I feel like she's really solid and she can really push close, but she wasn't. She was sort of like doing all her feints and throwing her hands a little bit out of range, and so when she was trying to play in range, she sort of like got in so close, she ended up getting tagged on by Grasso because she kind of had to jump in with that extra big range that she was leaving out. I would have liked to have seen her walk down into Grasso a little bit more. And like I say, I feel like we started to see that in the third round. So she started to make adaptations and changes, which goes to show a good team behind her and good evaluation, self-evaluation of where you might be at in the fight. But it was a little too late, unfortunately, for her. But really, really good for Grasso. That's a great performance, really was.
Yeah, I thought it was a really impressive performance from Alexa Grasso, I got to say. But Macy Barber, was very, very good as well. Really enjoyable fight, mate, to take us up to the main event. Just quickly though, mate, I will say this was the Barber and Grasso was the co-main event on a big pay-per-view card. It should have been 5 rounds. I don't know if that's because it wasn't initially the co-main, and
yeah, I don't know
maybe
whether they
something
do
changed.
that. I don't
So
think
then
they do that
didn't
with the
do
women.
it.
Yeah, I don't
Or
think
for the
they
co-mains.
do. Not for the women. I think
they did
the
it for the
guys
main event. If the women main event, though, they do 5 rounds, don't they?
Not sure. Yeah, we're going to have to perhaps have a little look into that on exactly what they do. Yeah. Not too sure about that.
Yes.
But I would have loved to see more of that fight. I really would have.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
It was over 3 rounds, and Grasso was good. Well done to her.
Next up, mate, the main event of the evening. Camara Usman defeated Gilbert Burns via TKO 34 seconds into the 3rd round. This was what I would call a clinic by a certain Mr. Usman.
Yeah, Usman done well because he was, put into some very harsh situations very early, and Gilbert was looking really, really dominant. So when we were talking about,
well, by the way,
Gilbert
Burns is a top fighter.
Yeah, he is. This guy's, got really explosive striking. He can wrestle somewhat, and we all know his grappling is incredible. Really is the full package. The thing that I do have as criticism is that the style of fighting that he does portray is very explosive. And in turn of that, he doesn't have a very effective coasting game. I wouldn't say tired game, although that needs, adjusting. I don't think he's very good when he's tired. He's a little bit like McGregor for me. If McGregor gets tired, he suddenly falls apart. He doesn't have a tired game, but he also doesn't have a coasting game. He's like all or nothing. So when he exploses combinations, it's everything into it. And again, it nearly pulled off for him. He had pinpoint accuracy. There was real power on it. But the fact that Usman's not been in these big wars where he hasn't been hit a lot over the course of all these fights, he's got that wrestling to fall back on. He's protecting himself from receiving so many of these big strikes over the years that other fighters have taken. So he showed really, really good chin, and the cornermanship as well. To simplify everything. Hey, your jab's going to win it. Yeah. And he did. He started sitting behind that jab. And now, see, the difference between them both is that Usman has such a great coasting game. He's got the jab, he's got the reach, he's got the wrestling for it. So he dominates both ranges. He dominates the outward range with that incredible jab and timing that he has. But also when the other guy comes in, he can smother them with the wrestling and just hold them up against the fence. He doesn't even have the takedown. The other thing I really liked about Usman was the fact that he didn't allow Gilbert to come up when he was on his back. And this is something that you don't see a lot of. Normally you see people step back and the ref calls them up. No, keep them down. You might as well absorb as much of that round as you can in an advantageous position, and started putting down those body shots. I liked what he was doing there, and I think that was part of what equated to Gilbert Burns beginning to tire. He's having to keep his head up off the mat. He's getting punched to the belly on the ground. He's getting leg kicked, which is going to affect your footwork and fluidity. When you do get back to the feet, these were all chips off the block that would break down that boulder into a small stone. I think he just chipped away at him. And the other thing with Usman that impressed me was the fact that he could have perhaps put him away earlier, but he kept it and did it the safe route because he's got 5 rounds to do it, and that's a true sign of a champion. So, I'm not always a fan of Usman's attitude sometimes. And, we all have people that just fit and sit well with us, but you cannot mock that incredible performance. He went through adversity. He got rocked numerous times. He was under a lot of pressure. For the first time, we actually saw him backpedaling and having to fight on the outer fringes of the cage. Normally, he's pushing people in the cage with his jab and he's wrestling. But no, Gilbert Burns was putting it to him. And indeed, I think if you're going to beat someone like Usman, you have to be doing that. But to do that, you have to have good cardio also and have a coasting game. If Gilbert had a different style attached to the style that he's got now and perhaps would explode and then come back and coast and sit behind a jab and a double jab and an inside leg kick himself and footwork around a little bit, we perhaps would have seen him nip the rounds and we would have seen him take it to 5 rounds and it'll be down on decision. But the fact that he doesn't have that coasting style about him, it put him into exhaustion. And we saw that numerous times, as we spoke about earlier on tonight. Several of the fighters kind of blew their wad. And I feel like it was a little bit of the case with Gilbert Burns, which is why I couldn't really go for him. I just felt like if he was going to beat Usman, he has to put him away. And I think Usman's just too damn resilient. Such a shame, but a great effort by Gilbert Burns. He would still beat most fighters out there. If he really wants it, he could perhaps have another punt at trying to take that title and trying to add another style along with the style that he's got, which is what I was talking about. He could have another punt at Usman in the near future, but he has to reprove himself. He's 34 now, so I think he will have another another try for it. But there's a lot of other good fighters that will really test him now they've seen that fight. As a coach, I'll be looking at that and seeing a weakness there.
There's
so
something to target, isn't there?
There is. And to me, he reminds me a little bit of, what's the name of that other fighter? Oh my goodness, here we go with names. I'll see if it comes to me. He fights at lightweight. Really devastating.
We're not helping you. No, it amuses me too much.
But his style reminds me of the same. I can't think of his name. It may come to me a bit later. I'm going to try and look it up while we talk about other things. But he reminds me of another fighter that looks
next. Because I saw a few people saying Leon Edwards should get the
Leon Edwards has had such misfortune. Yeah, that wouldn't be out of place to see that. I would certainly go for that.
He hasn't fought for nearly 2 years, is the other thing.
No.
It's 18 months, I think, since his last fight. So should he fight someone else first, do you think?
I don't think Leon Edwards' style is the type of style to suffer from the cage rust. I think he'll still perform very, very well, to be honest. And Usman don't put you under that kind of flurry pressure. So it's not like he's going to catch him out. So I feel like if Leon Edwards was to take the fight, he's got 5 rounds. I feel like he would get his groove very, very quickly in there, because Usman don't go at that blasting pace. I don't think that would be a bad matchup at all. But I'd love to see him, perhaps fight Covington again. I think this is a fight that's inevitable.
Yeah, I do like that Covington Leon Edwards fight, and I do like the thought of Covington versus Usman as well. So it's kind of interesting which direction they go with. Whether maybe they'll do Covington Edwards with the winner getting Usman. That kind of seems to satisfy. Possibly. That seems to satisfy all the different aspects of it, I think, doesn't it? But it's going to be an interesting one, man, because Camara Usman got caught, got a bit rocked, but
he did. We've never seen that before.
Ultimately, came back and destroyed Gilbert Burns. No one's done that to Gilbert Burns. No one.
So, no, you're right.
As much as there was maybe like a bit of a chink in the armour for Camara Usman, nobody's done that to Gilbert Burns. Like, no one has taken him apart in that manner. And that's what I just look at that, and that's why I found that so impressive. Because Gilbert Burns, let's be honest, has been on a bit of a tear. Like, he's been taking apart anyone in his way. So for Camara Usman to not just go in there and destroy him, he went in there after getting rocked and destroyed him. Almost like he had a bit of a point to prove against his former teammate, dare I say. Because for former teammates who had been quite respectful, within the build-up, and there was no sort of real animosity, they had a bit of a stare down at certain points, mate. They
did. Yeah,
there was something there, wasn't there? Whether it was just they didn't like the fact that one of them had got caught and the other one was beating the crap out of him. I don't know, but there was a bit of.
I think it's to do with
a bit of niggle, wasn't it?
I think it's along the lines of that. I think Usman trained at their team, and then he went off to another team, and then started talking shit, and doesn't give any credit for the fact that the whole reason he got out to the States and got into UFC was from the previous team, and he sort of like left and went to another team, and then didn't talk very nicely about them when they've done so much for him. I think it was along those lines. But I mean, look, the ultimate story of this was that Usman got hit hard several times and recovered extremely well from it, and Gilbert got hit by that jab, looked dazed and never recovered from it. Every glancing hit thereafter was putting him on his back. He never recovered. It's like he couldn't shake the cloud off that had come over his head, and started looking very, very vulnerable and looked really, really gassed as well all of a sudden. He just declined very quickly. And the other fighter, by the way, I was just looking at, was Kevin Lee. Kevin Lee's someone, again, that does things with a lot of tenacity, and he can overrun some opponents with his striking and wrestling. But I just feel like he falls apart. If he doesn't get the job done early, he can be really looking vulnerable on someone that counters back very well. Someone who's got good cardio, tough, and pushes back the pace. He starts to look vulnerable. But there's another fight before we finish up, if you don't mind. There was another one between Mallory Martin and Poliana Viana. This was a great display of grappling. because I like these feet
on the
prelims. Yeah. And I watched it because I want to watch it because, like I say, I do have an interest in
you're
who's
a big
coming up through with
the female fighters,
of the female fights. Yeah, I'm loving it, and I want to see who's going to come up into the picture. I take time out to watch this one, and this was really good. And now we saw some excellent transitions of grappling from what's her name, Vienna. Vienna was on her back. She worked her guard ever so slickly. Really, really well, was punching off her back really smoothly, and then threw up the triangle. And now when she had the triangle on, she was struggling to get it done. And this is all, amazing performance in defense for Mallory Martin. She was in this full-on triangle, and anyone else would have just tapped, but she kept toughing it out. She got put into an armbar from the triangle while still in it. She got bent arm locks. It looked horrible. There was times I was struggling to watch because I thought something was just going to give way in the arm, but she kept toughing it out. But eventually she did succumb to the triangle after being in it quite a long time, really fighting it out. She was getting punched, she was getting elbowed, she was getting arm bars put on, elbow locks put on, and all along with this triangle. And she so nearly got out. And it would have been really interesting to see what would have happened regards, busting you nut for a submission that don't work in Vienna. But Vienna was utterly skillful off her back. She really, really was. And this is someone that I'm sure we're going to have to look out for in the near future. So if people ain't seen that one, watch that one because it's a great grappling fest.
Yeah, I'm just having a look at it. It looks sensational. It's only 8 minutes in total, but it's just...
Yeah, it's in nearly all triangles. And it's just like, how did she not tap out? She even went... I tell a lot of my students to do the pull down on the head, put your hips up. She was even side on the submission numerous times. But just incredible that she could survive that long, because it was all but in. Now I don't know whether perhaps her saving grace for the length of time that she survived was the fact that she had her hair braided into a ponytail, and it will go down the back of the neck, and whether that was taking off some of the pressure, because that's the only thing I can think of, because when the hair's braided and thick down the back, particularly when they've got long hair, that will give a wedge of support behind the back of the neck. Whether that was making the triangle not complete sooner rather than it happening later, I don't know. But really, really impressive that she survived as long as she did, and equally impressive the fact that she never gave up on it and had faith in her grappling skills to keep it relevant to get the final tap.
Amazing, mate. I love it. I gotta say, I just the females, rarely do you have a snooze fest. Rarely. It's truly,
that was great.
Truly some sensational fights. Right, last couple of minutes, mate. To finish us off, we'll do some predictions for next week. Next week, isn't it? Next week, yes. Curtis Blades versus Derek Lewis is the main event of the evening. So we'll start there. Who you got for that, mate?
I think Blades is going to do it, but I'm going to say Derek Lewis. I'm going to go with my heart on this. I really want Derek Lewis to win it. I'm going to stick with that. I'm going to go Derek Lewis. I hope he wins.
I'm going to go with Curtis Blades, just because Curtis Blades has been on absolute fire recently.
He's looking good.
And then there was another fight I was going to ask you about. Alexei Oleinik versus Chris Dacos. So Oleinik is ranked 10. Dacos is outside the top 15.
I'm going to go. Let's go underdog. I'm going to go Chris. Let's go underdog on this one. I think he's going to have something to really prove. Yeah.
He's got 89% of his wins come from TKO and KO.
It's
be interesting, man.
You can't bet against him.
That's quite a big fight to give him against Oleinik. They don't, Oleinik's ranked 10. He's got a bit of a reputation. I can't imagine they would just give him any old person outside of the rankings. You know what I mean?
No.
So let's have a look at Dacos.
He comes in. He comes in to get you. So
Dacos beat Nemesento Ferreira in the first round, KO, 45 seconds. He beat Porter, first round, 4.5 minutes, KO. There's 2 UFC fights. So he's clearly got some KO power. It's just whether he can take it to someone of the level of Alexei Oleinik. And then the other one I was going to ask you about is Tom Aspinall versus Andrei Arlovski at heavyweight.
Yeah, see, Arlovski's still so relevant these days. Yeah. I'm going to go Arlovski.
I'm going to go with the Brit, Tom Aspinall. He's 6'5", Tom Aspinall is. He's got a 2-inch height advantage. He's got a weight advantage. He's got a reach advantage. So I'm going to go with Tom Aspinall, even though, look, Arlovski he might not be ranked anymore, but
he's still really good, and he does
still
really
a real deal, mate, isn't he?
Yeah, he is the real deal, and he's very, very good at those people because he's a pretty big dude himself, and to be much bigger, you're normally going to give away some speed, or you don't recover so well when you do get hit, and he always ends up getting at someone at some point. So I just think his experience will push through, and the fact that he's always done quite well against someone that's taller than himself.
So Aspinall's 9-2 in his career, which for a heavyweight is a pretty good record.
Yeah, that is a good record, yeah.
He's fought twice in the UFC. He beat Collier in the first round of July last year, 4 minutes into the first round via KO. And then he beat Bardo in October of last year with a KO inside a minute and a half. So, look, Tom Aspinall's got something about him. I would love to see, a Brit just go in there and really make a statement by knocking out.
It'll be great, and for him
to knock out Anton Arlovski, mate, would be huge for Tom Aspinall.
Yeah, I just wonder whether it's too much too soon for him. I don't know. That experience is huge.
What he was, I suppose, is what it comes down to.
I still think he's keeping himself in amazing shape. He's not got chinny. He went for a spate, didn't he? Where he did get hit and he was getting knocked down and getting TKO, but he seems to have. I don't know. Seems to have just got himself back on track, and he's always looking really good of late. So I'm going to stick with him.
I've just had a quick look at Tom Aspinall's fight with Bardot. He just mauls him for the whole 4 minutes. Like, he just takes him down. That's a good takedown as well for someone so big. Yeah. He got him in the clinch, swept both his legs from underneath him, on top of him, and then he's just patiently waiting until he gets the mount and he beats his ass. To put it technically. I'll send you the link to that, mate, because that's interesting. Tom Aspinall flies under the radar a little bit.
I think I remember it. I think I remember seeing it fight. I remember this.
Yeah, we would have covered at least the second one. But however, what I will say, mate, is he's now he's on my list of targets for guests on the show. As you know, I'm trying to get as many fighters as we can from all around the world. So we're looking. We've got one booked in for the 7th. Now we're looking to try and get one tied down for next week. But we've had a tremendous run of guests the last couple of weeks. We had Cory McKenna tonight. We had Jake Hadley. We had Arnold Allen. We've had Jack Stone. And never mind, all the other sensational guests before that which come.
Sure.
So yes, we'll see how it pans out. But hopefully we'll have another guest next week with a bit of luck. But Danny, as ever, mate, it's a pleasure. Guys, if you want to do me a favour, follow at Danny Batten FS on Twitter and Instagram. Help us build up the show's pages, and of course follow A.C.E Podcast Nation. But most importantly, subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/A.C.E Podcast Nation. And if you click the bell next to where it says subscribe, every time we go live or we upload, you'll get a notification in your emails or your whatever notification box. And that's always handy for our show as well, because we do the occasional live show when the UFC throws in those Wednesday shows. We do a live show either straight after the show on the Wednesday or on the Thursday to make up. So we've got 2 shows in a week then. But look out for that. Best way to keep in contact with us, social media. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like as ever. Send your questions. And we'll be back next week, Danny.
Yes, we will.
As always, mates. Love it. Episode 63. Yep. We're 63 episodes. More top guests coming your way. See you next week.
Defending champion, welcome, Danny Batten.
You're listening to A.C.E Podcast Nation, the hottest new podcast network and YouTube channel in the UK, featuring original series, top guests, expert analysts, and more. Check out facebook.com/AceCast Nation for news on latest guests and shows. Watch every show in full at youtube.com/ACE Podcast Nation.